that you shrink them and paint them, and we're supposed to love that, and we're here to say maybe we want a little bit more, and there is a lot more, and there's some really great voices in design, and that's what we're here to present tonight. So I'm going to start with just a really simple question. I'll start with Melody because she's making eye contact with me foolishly. Just to say, I just wonder if you could talk, all of you briefly, a little bit about how you got started in design and with sneakers in particular.
So I don't know where to start. Well, with sneakers, I started making heels, actually. I started with women's heels in my design career, and then I moved on to jewelry, and I guess somebody at Reebok was a fan of the jewelry. So they contacted me because they were doing an influencer program. So basically they were choosing, I think, like 4 or 5 women from 5 different continents in the world, and they wanted each woman to design their own shoe. And then there was going to be this whole, like, we are the world kind of collab. So I did the collab, and I was so excited to do it, and they donated money to my favorite charity, and it was just supposed to be that. And I did the shoe, and back then I was a pretty new company, so we didn't have like a counter on our website. So if you have like certain inventory, because we made all the jewelry in house, so a lot of the stuff was made to order. We had small quantities, and we put the shoe up on Thursday night or Friday. Oh, it was Friday night, and then we came back to work Monday, and we had sold 3,000 pairs over the weekend. And so we freaked out, and we were like, what do we do? We only had like 30 pairs. Because we were like, do you think we could sell 30? I think we could sell 30. So I called Reebok right away, and I was like, what do you guys have? Like, can you sell me the rest of your inventory? And can you give me 60 days to pay it off? And so they had 1,000 pairs. We got the 1,000 pairs, and then the rest of the people that had ordered, 90% of them waited 6 weeks for the shoes. Remarkable. So I think we paid attention to that, and then we got into talks about collaboration. Hello. Hi. Thank you for coming. My name is Sophia. So my story with my involvement in the world of sneaker design, I come from a background of illustration. I studied illustration, but during my time in school, I just always felt like I shouldn't limit myself to just drawing for a living or just illustration. So I went out of my way to just do things that I was interested in, like publication design. I interned at Complex Media for a little bit, worked with a fine artist doing silk screening and washing screens, a lot of internship labor, worked with a fashion designer who worked on a lot of graphics for Stussy and Undefeated and streetwear related brands, so I can learn about the production process of bringing something to market. And during that time, kind of just learned a lot of different things, and growing up in Queens, New York, sneaker culture and just hip-hop pop culture has always been a big influence just in my daily lifestyle. And so around 2014, I was offered the opportunity by Puma, and similar to Melody, they had reached out to me to do the collection, and it was a global launch for both male and female, and so that was kind of the boundaries that I had to work within. And I wanted to create a collection of apparel, footwear, and accessories that cater to a very wide audience. So everything from, your hype beast that waits in line for sneakers, your really swaggy auntie and uncle that still wear really fresh shoes, and also kind of that Urban Outfitters hipster. And I'm kind of wearing that reference model here that has kind of like an ombre design. And of course, I added my illustration on there as well that gives reference and homage to New York City through the lens of a New Yorker, and also through the lens from kind of just the rest of the world and how they perceive New York. That's my story.
across the sneaker world. I don't know, I've always been interested in fashion, and I grew up with a lot of art. My dad was a big art collector, and we traveled a lot to Japan as children. And so I was in college, and I didn't know what I wanted to do with myself. I say that I got a degree in partying, drugs, and alcohol. And so when I was done, I'm like, I don't know what to do with my life. And so I was working at this store called it was a Raver store, and they were going out of business. And so I was like, I'm going to buy this place and turn it into something that I think is fantastic. And, traveling overseas and seeing retail on a whole nother level, like, Wonderwall, the way that they did the vape stores, or, just in Japan, it's like, and Vivian Westwood stores, and it was just on a totally another plane. And I thought, well, why isn't that in Atlanta, And it was in the early 2000s, and nobody was really in the sneaker game in Atlanta besides Walters, and I had some good friends in New York that were doing it, and there weren't really any women. I used to call this industry the sausage mafia, but I was like, whatever, I'm gonna do this. I called my dad, and I'm just gonna go for it. And I figured if I was gonna fail, I was gonna fail with flying colors. So it's been a long, really good haul. That's how I got into it.
Fantastic. Well, what do you guys see as the kind of challenges or rewards of being a female in this industry? You're both, for you, you're designers and entrepreneurs. So what do you see? You're looking at me blankly. No, I'll put Sophia. There you go. I'll be there.
The question was...
What do you see as the challenges and rewards? I mean, how does being a woman in this industry and doing the kind of work that you're doing, do you think about it?
I mean, it's so crazy because I feel like the past 24 hours this has been an ongoing topic from, I did some interviews earlier in the day, and I feel like people, specifically for this event, we're talking about, sneakers, talking about footwear and a woman's place in that world. But I feel like it's a much bigger topic, which I'm just gonna touch on lightly, just reference it. I feel like it's a sausage mafia in terms of the whole world. It's not one specific industry of fashion, it's everywhere. So we're talking about things like gender equality, sociology, cultural perception of women in all the different places around the world of what we perceive as beauty. In America, women are most likely, or mostly seen as attractive and sexy, if we're looking at history, when they're wearing heels, when they're wearing stilettos, and sneakers have a reference to athletes and sports, which has always been a little bit more of a boys' game than a girls' game. So I think, obviously, in 2016, there's a lot of great dialogue that's happening, obviously with social media, and I think it's just the beginning of this conversation of shifts. Maybe it's a shift, maybe not. Either way, at a standstill. Personally, I think some of the challenges that I experience with sneakers in particular is that a lot of brands don't really feel like there's enough of a market for women, so they don't really invest in it on the back end of things. They mainly invest in their men's stuff because they think that's where the big money is. And I don't think that they realize, I know for me growing up personally, all I bought was sneakers, and I either had to buy the kid sizes, or if I was lucky enough, they were sized down to my size. And I think that's what most girls have had to do. And there's been this whole shrink it and pink it mentality, and we don't want that. So of course that's not going to do well because we don't buy that. And so I think it's about shifting the perception and shifting the culture that there is actually a market. It just needs to be identified, and it needs to be explored further, and it's not just one-dimensional. I think that women are, I think we're kind of like holograms. We have all these different sides to us. We do like stilettos, and we do like to dress up, but we also like sneakers. Why can't it be both? It just seems like very dichotomous. And so it's just interesting how it hasn't, there's things that I learn all the time about this has never been done before, and I'm kind of shocked. How has this never been done before? Like, has nobody done this yet for women? So I just think that there needs to be some sort of paradigm shift in terms of like what women want and what we like, and there needs to be more voices. And I think that's what's happening slowly but surely. And I just wanted to add really quickly, I think, like she said, a lot of times the bigger brands, they feel like if the product isn't going to sell a specific color, they're just going to assume that specific colorway sell better amongst women. And I think you have to understand that as a consumer, that everyone here in this room who spends money, where you spend your money, basically, is telling the brand something. If you want to see more, colorways offered for women, voice it. Now we have the power of social media. We can actually contact the brands directly and send them messages. And there's literally a whole team of people who are sitting at computers and reading everyone's messages, There's the power in that, and of course, again, where you spend your money, because if you're, where was I going from? I don't remember. But there's power in where you spend your money, and to be conscious of that. Like, for example, I always try to shop at small mom and pop shops because I want to keep them in business. I want to keep the middle class there versus going to Target if I can, or Walmart.
Yeah, stay out of Walmart. I don't know. My experience, I don't really think of myself as a female entrepreneur. I think of myself as an entrepreneur. And I was raised to feel that way. Like, my dad is a pretty powerful man, and he taught me that I was just as good as any dude as powerful as him or anyone. Actually, he taught me that I had the advantage because I'm a woman, and with woman comes intuition. And because of that, that's my power. And so I've come across all kinds of stuff, employees that may think I'm crazy, but they'd say maybe I'm crazy, whereas a man, they would say he's cool and he's tough, So I think there's like little things that happen, but I just kind of don't let it get me down. And then there's just sometimes where like I go into a meeting and it's all bros, and I feel like a fish out of water. And so I send I hire guys that can speak the language. Where I definitely try to know my weaknesses, and where I'm weak, I bring somebody in that's strong. So sometimes guys talk better to guys, but for the most part, I don't know that I've ever. Well, one time in Japan, I think in Japan in the very beginning, I had a bit of a difficult time because I'm a woman, and I think in Japan it's even more challenging to be a woman, getting certain lines. But for the most part, I don't know. I try to keep at it like any man. So.
Well, I think it's interesting. Obviously, it's the panel is about being the whole idea is sort of where the women are, but I do think it's funny because we don't always define ourselves by our gender, and it feels in some way like, why do we have to justify that we're women doing this, versus men who aren't asked what it's like to be a male sneaker designer. It's just what it's like to be a sneaker designer. And so I sort of apologize for that on one hand, but I think it was a really important question for us to raise here because it was something that was kind of ignored in the show.
Well, there's a clear inequality still. I mean, we're not equal.
Yes.
So you were really lucky to have a dad like that. Really lucky, and that's rare.
Minority.
Yeah, that's definitely a minority. I mean, I was raised to be, my value is to be Mrs. Dr. blah, 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 or like whoever I married is going to give me my value. So it's not, and that's just in my culture, but I think in American culture in general, like, we're still not equal. So there's still disadvantages. I think everybody just experiences it differently. I think especially too, going back to your original question of, what
Thank you.
What it's like being a female in this game. I feel like anytime you're walking into a room, or for me, when I'm going into a meeting for a pitch, obviously I'm dressed for a meeting, but if I'm talking to a conference room full of middle-aged white men, like, I know they see me as this, like, middle-aged, and go, first of all, I'm being seen as, being profiled and put in a lot of different boxes. First, because of my skin color, and of course, the gender. And so whatever information that's coming out of my mouth that I'm sharing with them is also going to be kind of filtered through these lenses. So I almost have to work harder And I'm very aware of these boxes that people automatically kind of put me in because of the country that we're in. And so I definitely try to carry myself in a way, whether it's the way I speak, the way I'm dressed, however I go out in the world, however I decide to present myself to the rest of the world is definitely how I would like the world to kind of address me in many ways.
And I think everything, it seems like a lot in this industry, even marketing, everything's done through the male gaze. I feel like I see images of tennis shoes on naked women. I often think that everything seems to be done through the man's perspective. And I think that's changing with powerful women like these guys that are out designing incredible shoes and giving a voice to us. I think it's changing, but there's still a long way to go.
Well, I think what's interesting, the voice issue is something I wanna ask about, because I think you said it, in a way, as a consumer, we have a lot of power to change what is made, and a lot of companies are listening, and they're actually trying to forecast and track what's gonna happen. But you guys have both been really, and your store have been really successful with sort of harnessing social media as one of the voices. I mean, the amount of followers, I mean, this is right now how models are being cast in modeling agencies. It's all about your Instagram account. It's not necessarily how beautiful you are or what look you are, but how many followers you're gonna bring in. And I think that's something you guys are really, strategic. It seems like you're very savvy about knowing that voice that you have and the kind of people who follow you and the kind of images and messages that you put out really articulate yourself and your brand. I mean, in a way, what you're making is really sort of speaks about yourself. Do you think about that a lot when you're producing the kind of, so you both are very active on social media? You think about that a lot, or how probably do you?
Yeah, I would say I'm very aware of the content that we put out. I mean, right now at this point in time, it's social media, but I don't depend on it, because if you depend on it, then your career only lasts as long as your Instagram account does, or social media account. I think right now it is a marketing tool, so I use it as a marketing tool. It's just another tool in the toolbox for me, and I'm very aware of the content we put out because it's the internet, so it's going to haunt you like 10, 20 years from now, and there's just, you never know who's watching. The streets is watching always. I've definitely, encountered people in the past who have just like seen a post of mine and just said, oh my gosh, like one time, it's just really interesting. Well, just to keep the story short, but I went on my first run. I'm not a runner at all, but I went on my first run. It was with Nike, and I recorded it and just like posted it along the way. And it was the worst experience of my life. I hated it. And then because I'm not a runner. I'm really bad at that. But everyone on Instagram seems to think I'm like a runner. But 2 years later, I met this girl. She was like, hey, Sophia, blah, blah, I follow you on Instagram. I don't know if you remember, but you went on this really amazing run that night years ago. And I'm like, uh-huh. And she's like, I was just so inspired by what you were doing, running with everyone. And so I actually started a running crew in Toronto. And we were like this many people deep now. And I'm like, really? And that's when I realized, hold up, we're onto something here. What you put out there in the world can, even though they're only seeing it surface level, because everyone seems to take things for face value nowadays, which is a good thing and bad thing, but people are really watching. And everything that you put out there, whether it's a caption or a bikini photo, whatever it is, it has some sort of impact on someone. That's why people follow you, because they want to see the images, the messages that you're sending out into the world in your feed. And so, yes, I am very conscious of what kind of story I'm telling to the world, and everyone has a different goal for their Instagram account. For my own personal Instagram account, it's just things that I'm interested in and just an extension of myself in social media format. Yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with social media, but I think one of my favorite things to do is sort of look at trends on social media, and I I've noticed that probably in the last like 5 to 6 years, it's changed from this concept of attraction. You know, like before it used to be like the interaction between men and women was about attraction. So you would see somebody and sometimes it would be like, I don't know why I like him, but I do, or there's something about him, or something about her. And it sort of shifted to seduction, where everything is this, it's this thing, you know, it has to be perfect and it has to be put on, and it's really interesting to me. So when I see like my sisters kind of falling for this, or you know, that when I see that this has become the trend, it really worries me. So I think more recently, how I've justified social media is by sort of providing a new language, and I feel like that has been the most gratifying for me, because there's all these languages for different brands, like Reckless Girls, or like You Can't Sit With Us, and I'm like, why is that trending? Like, why is that okay to say you can't sit with us? Like, that's not, you know, why? So it just feels like